Hello world, my name is Atticus and welcome back to the semi-annual Glitch Delve episode. Today, we look at Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. The only game in the series to have that naming convention. Joining the illustrious ranks of Final Fantasy II, Dark Souls 2, and Super Mario Bros. 2 of game sequels that, according to most fans, didn't quite strike the right balance of new and old. But unfortunately, we're not here to talk about sequelitis, so in some order, let's look at those bugs. Number first, we have the Fairy Warp glitch, performed by casting the jump spell and then the fairy spell and ascending until you've warped somewhere new, like Minus Town. This one's fun because it takes advantage of underflowing a number rather than overflowing it, like I'm used to seeing. Basically, the game has to track where on the screen Link is, and since this is a two-dimensional game, he gets an X and Y coordinate, and those inform where he is on the map. The Y coordinate starts at 0 from the top of the screen and increases as you go down, capping out at 255. So the top of the map has a Y coordinate of 0 and the ground is at like 200 or something. By using the jump spell and the fairy spell in quick succession, you can get Link to ascend higher than the top of the screen, but since this is an unsigned value, meaning it can never be negative, once you get Link high enough, his Y coordinate will underflow from 0 to 255, plunging him below the ground to where warp zones are hidden. Zelda 2 doesn't have any bottomless pits, any hole you fall into warps you somewhere, or kills you. So I imagine every map is set up with this warp zone at the bottom of the screen, but only certain ones actually have an explicit destination. The rest are either pull randomly or point to a default. I'm leaning towards the former, it probably looks at some specific memory address. At number next, we have the ill-named Desert Fight Anywhere glitch, where if you break a boulder with the hammer in the overworld, leave and then come back, the dust from the boulder will count as a desert tile, allowing you to engage in desert-located combat if you lure an enemy to that tile. It's on the list, but I don't know if I'd really call it a glitch. They probably went with the desert tile for the visual clarity. You could call it a bug that the desert tile in this corner case shouldn't map to the desert fight screen, but I'm pretty sure everything is working as intended. The elevator glitch, however, is a corner case that I'd happily call a bug. If you find yourself approaching an elevator that is just a little bit off the ground, you can slide under it, and the elevator won't move because it's smart enough to not just check Link's X-coordinate. The bug part comes around when the elevator pushes Link into the ground, causing him to get stuck. You can get help from an enemy to damage boost out of there, but just like in general, don't slide under elevators. And finally, in our mini segment of kinda useless glitches, there's the fast experience trick, which involves beating the game and then quickly starting a new one. If done quickly enough, the new file will level up immediately. Technically, I think there just needs to be one file that has beaten the game, then one file beats the boss and saves out, and you start a new game on the third file. I'm not sure, I didn't try it out. I imagine this happens due to poor memory flushing. After beating a boss, Link gets some experience, but if you're able to save out and start a new file quick enough, that XP gain stays in memory for the new file to pick up. The logic for gaining experience probably only listens for if there's experience in the buffer to be applied, so if that value isn't properly flushed between files, you get situations like this. Walls are surprisingly finicky things. I've made a game before, and let me tell you, I did not expect to spend as much time as I did making sure the walls acted like walls. Zelda 2 has a jump spell to allow Link to jump higher than normal, and that's supposed to be used to clear tall gaps. But if you take advantage of some wall chicanery, you can actually just jump off the wall and make it without using any magic. There's probably a scene that Link lands on, and for a second he counts as standing on the ground, which allows him to jump once more. On a specific tile to the south of the Ocean Palace, you can find a desert scene with a bag of money. At first it looks like a reward for exploring it. If you grab the bag and move on, it'll probably continue to seem that way. But were you to do a down thrust in that area for a while, you'd eventually be rewarded with 10 experience for killing some kind of subterranean creature. Considering the experience and locale, it seems likely that these are glitched levers that, for some reason, don't surface. I imagine they were supposed to ambush you after getting the money, but the flag never flips, so you can safely loot this random desert. There is a creature called a Bago Bago that appears on certain maps, such as the Death Mountain Trail, that will jump at length. You might think that if you can block its jump with a wall that you will be safe, but that would be false, because these little guys can go right through them. It looks like something is happening, and honestly this could be intentional. But it's a neat piece of trivia all the same. When in town, if you cast a spell and then talk to someone and close the dialog box all in quick succession, you can do a sort of palette swap. This happens because closing the text box freezes the game so it can redraw the background. And if you manage to capture the screen flash from the spell, you can freeze the screen long enough for the flash routine to end without clearing up the effect, though changing screens will set this back to normal. There are a few encounter tiles in the overworld to deal with, blocking the way forward to the Great Palace, for example, and these can be tough fights, but you can make them much easier with a bit of timing. Random encounters also spawn on the overworld and run around, and these tend to be much easier to deal with. If you can get a random encounter to run on top of an encounter tile, you can walk into the now very busy tile and will have to deal with the random encounter. Once that's dealt with, you'll be spit back out onto the encounter tile, but since you're already on it and not stepping onto it, the game doesn't send you into the encounter, allowing you to safely walk off. You will have to repeat the process anytime you want to go through that tile, however. You can learn Link's infamous downward strike in this game, and because the attack is a single frame rather than a full animation, you can queue up an incredible amount of damage by button mashing while in the air. For each frame in the game's 30 frames a second that you press down while in the air, you can trigger an additional attack. I believe the community calls this jackhammering. And that'll do it for this video. There's another wrong warp you can do that involves talking to someone very quickly and then going through a door while they fly away, but I have no idea what's going on with that. I had ambitions for this video. Not necessarily large ones, but I wrote this script back at the end of March, and looking at the list of bugs, I thought I could probably get footage of those. But then I had a monstrously busy month, and I had no time to work on this video whatsoever. I think that's more or less settled, so I should be good heading into next month, but also Tears of the Kingdom is releasing, so who's to say? I have been Atticus, and thank you for participating.